transparency, and what I would call reporting on relevant metrics. That's not an easy task. On the contrary, there's lots and lots of challenging metrics there, challenging discussions, which I hope we'll discuss this afternoon. But there's one big positive trend, and that will show you in the next slide. Next slide, please. Because actually, there is a whole ecosystem developing around living and decent wage and about reporting. It starts with NGOs on fair wage, ICEL, trade unions, financiers that are asking for living wage indicators, like the Living Wage Coalition, for instance. That is, accountancy firms are now looking more and more at the metrics and to collect relevant and meaningful information on this. Multi-stakeholder platforms, of course, like GRI or Global Compact, all stress the importance of reporting, and also in order to measure progress. Of course, individual multinational enterprises, Philips, DSM, IKEA, but many, many more are looking at this partly from defensive motives, meaning you have to report about this because you want to have a decent image, but partly also because it provides them with the metrics that is needed to go into track and trace, sustainable supply chain management, responsible purchasing and the like. And of course, also to bring the world to the next stage, which of course now is also supported by governments. For instance, procurement policies or EU targets really strive also for living or decent wages, not only within the EU, but also internationally. And luckily, yesterday, I heard that the Biden administration in the US makes living wage, living income, a key target of its policies for the next 4 years. Finally, we have what I would call the major influence by the United Nations and the custodian agencies around this. Custodian agency mean a number of the international organizations like the ILO, the OECD, but many, many others are supporting this collection of relevant indicators. And that's why they are called custodian agencies, because they want to develop the metrics that will support this change towards a more living wage and decent wage for all. Next slide, please. And just to give you an idea, SDG 12.6, with 12 is the responsible supply or production and consumption, which is one of the key SDGs, explicitly said we want to encourage companies, especially large and transnational companies, to adopt sustainable practices and integrate sustainability information into their reporting cycle. Information, of course, is not enough. It has to be implemented. It has to be made relevant. It has to be coordinated, and it has to be reliable. But it is, in any case, very clear that the SDG agenda, which recently got a sort of new impetus by the Corona crisis also, because it's systemic failure written large, which can only be approached not by an vaccine development, but also by more sustainable supply chain, more resilient societies and the like. So the health issue is related to income, is related to growth, is related to climate. And that's, of course, the SDG agenda. So my final slide, next slide, please. Just basically say what is needed for progress. And hopefully we can discuss that today in much more detail as we are needed. First, what works best? There's a lot of discussion. Just go for one metrics, an index, like the GDP, for instance, and then we know what to steer on. This is a big problem because one metrics very often it gives a completely distorted picture of what is needed. So we have the dashboard approach as well. And you can see also index and dashboard are sometimes combined also, can be combined, and that will be one of the discussions. How to bring together supply and demand. Who's going to coordinate or broker this? Who's going to make it reliable that we can trust the data that are there, and how to develop that further? Then I think one of the most important parts is that we have to translate it to the micro level. If individual companies, and in particular also transnational corporations, can manage their value chains also on the basis of really reliable data and metrics, then they can also make it actionable, but also context specific. In Zimbabwe, living wage is different from living wage in the Netherlands. And of course, I'm a researcher, so there is an agenda for research topics. So you might want to align also with this. We certainly will do that research on the context, on value chains, on regulation, transition problems. And for me, one of the final clearest statement I hope that we can get together, is there a business case for living wage? Just to give you a non-scientific answer to this, the answer is, of course, yes. But the question then is, of course, how can we measure this and how can we make that available? So I'm happy to introduce these themes for this webinar, and I wish you lots of luck with the discussions and hope to continue on this track. Thank you.
Thanks a million, Rob. Really good. And so now to give us more information about what it's all about, so that's in the minimum wage database, the labor right index, we will present two videos. These two videos, both not more than 3 minutes, they make sure that you're up to level, that you understand all, and that you can be part of the discussion. So Niels and Akash, are you able to start the videos? Meanwhile, welcome all in the webinar.